Hello, hello. This is Zaide with another episode of DramaQuest. Today we are joined by Kakashii, the leader of the Eastern Coalition from the server Coirnav. Kakashii, welcome.
Thanks, Zaid. Happy to be here.
Before we dive into the Coirnav stuff, I know you have a really long background with EQ guilds, especially the TLP scene. Can you talk to us? How did you first find Everquest way back in the day?
Sure. That's actually a really good question. I think I was 18 or 19, and I just finished high school, and I was in transition to start my college years. And a friend of mine, one of my schoolmates, actually introduced me to Everquest. I started off. I remember at that point, I started off, and this was I think 1999. I started a half elf warrior, and I played until level 20, and then I realized that was not really so much for me, and I switched to a monk, and since then I've been playing monks completely. I've never played any other class as a main character other than monk.
Okay. Can you tell me really
Yeah,
quick, with your half elf warrior, were you Freeport, Kanos, or Gfei?
Gfei. Yeah.
Gfei, okay. And then what'd you do with your monk?
So my monk, I think I started off in Kinos, I think, yeah. And at the time back in '99 and 2000, I do recall, I think it was January in 2000 when I created a monk. So it was, I think, Velius just opened or it was going to open soon. But anyway, traveling around was still a nightmare, at that point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of stuck around in Kinos for a bit, Black Burrow, did a bit of South Karana, did the epic quest with headbands and all of that. So that kind of got me into the game and really sort of more involved with it as well.
Okay, and did you join any guilds back then?
Yeah, I did. Yes. There was a very old family guild. That was my first guild, I think. It's called Blades of something. And this was on Praxis, by the way. Um, and I didn't really do much with them. Like we did like group content in like Unrest, and I think we also attempted to do at some point when I hit 47, 46, 47, a fear raid, but that didn't end up well.
Right.
Yeah. So
I mean, like back in those days, like 90% of guilds were just kind of like casual guilds that never planned to raid,
correct.
or at most they did like a trash clear.
Correct, exactly, yeah. So trying to do stuff like even fear clear or even just clearing the trash in fear was really a big thing for us, and yeah, it was difficult, right? So, but that was all part of the excitement of it as well. Like actually, I remember when I first zoned into fear, I actually did have a sense of fear because I could lose
Right.
my stuff, and my corpse, and all of that was actually really what made EverQuest quite a unique experience to play at that point. Not to mention the social aspect of it, obviously.
Yeah, the risk was very real all the time back in the days.
Correct.
Like you said, even like travel was rough, and like I remember trying to go from Kanos to Freeport and being like, man, if I die out here, my corpse is going to be toast. There's no way I'll get it
Yeah,
back.
exactly. Yeah, that's right. So I was always worried and concerned about that. Not to mention as well, the internet connections back then were not great. Anytime someone picked up a phone in my house, I would get disconnected.
Right.
And just traveling anywhere, the everything was dark, right?
Yeah.
And being a human as well, that didn't really help. So, but it
Right.
was fun. It was definitely fun. So, um,
Okay. So how long did you stay on Praxis?
So I was on Praxis, I think, for quite a long time. So I played from 2000 and off and on because obviously I was in college and I went to university and also got a bit busy with real life. But I played until 2006 or seven, off and on. I played on
Wow.
Yeah, I played until we kind of got to um, I think it was past God at a point, or to DODH at least. But
I think 2007 probably had to be like Secrets of Fade, where
yeah, but I don't think I played too much at that point on Praxis, although my character was there. I
mm,
did help lead a guild on Praxis called Unity for a bit as well. I was an officer with the guild. But this was pretty much around, I think, GOD when I do recall we had to kind of take a break, or I had to take a break because I was transitioning to travel overseas to do my further my studies as well. So maybe I might have gotten the dates wrong. I think it was probably around 2004, 2005 ish. But
okay, well, God is a good time to take a break from EQ.
yeah, it was hard. I mean, GOD itself was difficult when it first launched at that point, right? So yeah. But yeah, no. So from then, I actually did also dabble a bit with P99. I think it was at that point I actually did look into P99 as well for a bit. I played with a core of mainly Asian Oceanic players on a guild called
hmm
Infernus.
Okay.
And I was also helping to lead that for a bit, at least lead raids, I mean. And it was great. I mean, we we kind of had a very good set of guys, and people that were also a bit casual, didn't really want to do too much of those hardcore sort of raids, and but we did fairly okay, I think, given our size as well. And a lot of this was without any sort of voice comms, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's so much harder to coordinate back
Yeah.
then. Like you had to have like macros of text and like hope that people read it.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging. I think also one of the problems with that is because if I recall, Infernus also had a lot of non-speaking, English-speaking players, so it was a bit hard
Uh,
to kind of get the message across if you had voice comms, which is why chatting in raids it was normally easier for them to read or at least translate. So that was a situation there. And from that point, I think after a while, I also took a break from leading or at least playing on P99. And at that point, I think it was around the time when Fippy was launching or had launched, I think.
yeah, Fippy came out shortly after Blue came out. I think Blue was going into like Kunark maybe when Fippy came out in 2011.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah, exactly. So I then started playing around in Fippy. And on Fippy itself, though, I didn't lead any specific guild or anything like that. I was kind of just a casual player and messing around with some friends as well who were there as well, trying it out with me. And then since then, I suppose for a while, I think it was towards the end of Kunak when it launched. There was a US guild that kind of um, branched off from one of the guilds there. So Twisted Fates, I think, or Twisted Legion was one of
Yeah,
the
Twisted Legion.
bigger guilds there. And
Yep.
then someone branched off from them and created a guild, and I decided to join that guild as well. It's called Ascendancy. I remember the leader was called Kirai. I probably pronouncing it
Yep.
wrongly.
Yeah, Kiri.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah. And it was great. I mean, Fippy was probably one of the more intense TLPs I've played, given the situation of how things were back then. Not just the voting sort of thing, but as I mentioned earlier to you as well, the harm touch wars and pretty much everything kind of goes. MOTM was not actually a thing.
Yeah.
People were boxing mages, SKs, macroing them, all of that. Um,
Yeah, you're in the trenches of raid mob warfare there with all the
yeah,
hacks and everything around. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, people warping everywhere and stuff like that. You had the Fippy detective and things like that going on. So it made for very interesting stuff to read on the forums.
Oh, the forum drama was legendary.
Yeah, yeah. So I recall actually passing the time and reading a lot from that as well. So no, so yeah, so we did okay actually after Kunag. We formed the guild. We messed around quite a fair bit and Valius and Luklin. And all the way up till I think it was DON, and then the guild kind of called it, and we tried to keep going with a few different variations of people taking over leadership and stuff, but um, yeah, the momentum kind of lost at that point, and we folded and we merged into Darkblood, which is Yukan's guild.
Yep, Darkblood of Solusek Ro, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And at
Yep.
that point, I guess we were into DODH and POR, I think. And it was basically the Darkblood and Citizen.
Yep.
And I don't think there's really a lot of other guilds at that point on the lifespan of the
Yeah,
server.
TL died in POR, and then there was that other
Correct.
guild called Aim to Misbehave for like one
Oh,
expansion.
yes. That rings a bell. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I think that was led by Yace and somebody else maybe, but
Yes.
yeah, pretty much it was Citizens server by then.
Yes, yeah. But again, a lot of very interesting events that unfolded. I remember actually when we were having POP just launch, and I was driving the Ascendancy Guild towards the um, what do you call? I think it was tactics. Not tactics. Innovation, and we were trying to do the crawl to trigger the dragon, the mechanic dragon, to actually get
Yeah.
access to the factory. Um, we sort of had a run in with Citizen or someone from Citizen, and I had a very good relationship with Dima. I mean, Dima is a really good guy um, in my books, and then in the end we kind of just. I think they sneaked through as we opened up the factory door, and we were trying to set up for that boss in POI that gave access to tactics. I forgot his name.
Yeah, Magnetic Behemoth.
Yes,
Famously, they got suspended for doing that.
correct. Yeah. And yes, correct. And that kind of happened because they ended up stealing the kill and sneaking in some flags. So, but we got it all resolved in the end. But stuff like that was kind of more of a thing that occurs. You see on the server. So that was interesting history as well for us going through stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, I guess Ascendancy and then Darkblood, and after SOF finished in FIPI, as in Secrets of Fadark, I kind of retired my monk there. I told you kind of wouldn't be playing on SOD, and I just pretty much took a break from FIPI completely. And I think at that point I was busy with real life with other stuff. I didn't really play much Everquest until I think it was Rage Fire first or Agna. I can't recall which one it was.
It was Ragefire
Yeah,
first, yeah.
probably.
Lockjaw and Ragefire.
Yeah. So, so then I got in touch with Yukon and threw around this idea that hey, I'm thinking of probably getting a lot of the Oceanic guys and Asian players I know to come back and try this out. And we were thinking maybe why not try and set up a guild where we've got US and Oceanic presence at the same time, so we kind of cover both sides of the time zones, and have like two different raids happening throughout the day. So on paper, it was kind of an interesting idea. It would have worked quite well if we actually did a lot of the pre-planning, which we did to a certain degree. But obviously, having two sets of leaders and two sets of officers, and trying to find some middle ground in between rules and things like that to make stuff work was more challenging than we thought. So, but we did get a guild live. So we call it Ascending Darkness. It went live on Rage Fire first, I think.
Okay.
Because then after that they opened up Lockjaw, if I'm not mistaken, because it was too full.
Yeah, Lockjaw was like 3 or 4 days later. Ragefire, by the way, had like the worst launch ever, right?
Yeah.
With like the server crashed all day.
Correct.
Then the second day they had to roll the whole thing back.
Correct. Yeah, they had a lot of problems, and then they announced, yeah, correct, late Lockjaw, and we were like, maybe we should move there as well. And then we decided, okay, we'll do that, and we went across, and then you guys were there as well, Faceless, and I think Dima's Guild Modest Men were there as well.
Modest Man.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I was on Lockjaw for a bit, leading a couple of classic raids. We did Sky and stuff like that, and then again that the whole idea of open world engagement was also backed by a lot of mass mage box armies, and
Oh yeah, it was real bad back
it
then.
was, yeah. And I think it was from that point that they actually decided to fix the problem eventually by introducing MOTM, right?
MOTM, Mark of the Old Ways,
Yes,
and TrueBox shortly after
correct.
that. Yeah, all big changes. And I think Ragefire and Lockjaw were the first TLP servers that had Chrono, which really enabled the huge box. Like we had like people boxing 100 characters eventually. You know what I mean? It was
Mm,
totally crazy.
yeah, it was pretty bad. Yeah, you're right. And I think like a lot of these sort of measures and controls they put in place helped a bit to a degree, but people always find different ways to skirt around the system as well. Although it was a
Oh
bit
yeah,
more
yeah.
contained versus how it was before. You're right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't really last too long. I didn't even see. I don't think I actually saw Kunak. Maybe I did, and then after that, I kind of called it a day. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to actually sustain that setup, and it was, yeah, we had a few internal clashes as well. And I mean, Yukan's a really nice guy. I loved him leading Darkblood when I was there with him. It Yeah, in the end, it kind of didn't work out between us in leading both the Oceanic side and also the US side, and so they kept going. I think for a bit, and eventually, I guess Ascending Darkness kind of disbanded, and I think a lot of those players actually still play, as you know now, on Ragefire. I think they're on Core Tempest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yep. So kind of funny enough, Ascended Darkness, I eventually had a really bad relationship with Faceless, and they would compete with us a lot and lose. I think exclusively lose. I don't think they ever won one.
Hmm.
So we were on a bad relationship for sure. They had a guild, like some guy named Memory tried to create a splinter guild from their guild called Legacy of Zek.
Ah, okay. Memory rings a bell,
And
but okay, yeah. Sorry.
yeah, he was like a gnome enchanter, and that made
Yes.
things worse. Then when they fell apart, I guess UCAN went to Ragefire, like you said, and basically became the top guild there over time.
Hmm.
And when Faceless years later would transfer to Ragefire, UCAN kicked our ass. So in the end, he got the win.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I think they did pretty well after that point, I suppose, right? So yeah, I think, and this is one of the problems I've also noticed as well when we were doing Coirnav. I find the early years in terms of the expansion lifespan difficult because it's kind of riddled with all these issues in terms of competition. Although, don't get me wrong, I mean, a lot of people actually do enjoy that and want to actually see that and go through that. But for people that genuinely want to kind of experience the game and the expansions and clearing content and challenging themselves against, PVE kind of thing, um, you'll have all of this sort of um, engagements that cause a lot of disruptions. And I found that as a bit of an issue during the first 1.5 years, I guess, in EC for Coinaf as well, which I can eventually talk about anyway. Um, but getting past that point and then just us against the environment, I think I found that a bit more interesting and fun in terms of playing the game versus a lot of these.
Yeah, I think it's better too. It should be you versus the game, unless you're on a PvP server. And I think the race is better when it's two teams basically not interfering with each
Yep.
other. It's just like a track race, like a track meet,
Yep.
right? You're doing your best, they're doing their best, and let's see who's faster.
Okay. Sorry, Zaid, I've got someone actually just spam calling me because I think there's something he needs. Can I just take a? Okay.
All right. Hey, sorry about that quick interruption, but we're back. And yeah, so I mean, like it is just so much better when when you don't really get griefed while you're playing the video game that you're playing to have fun, right? Like
Correct.
that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to kind of escape issues that they have on a day-to-day basis in real life. The game is meant to provide that escape, and then you log in and you run into grief, people griefing you and harassing you, and just then you kind of get put off. I mean, we had a lot of members during the early years of Classic, Kunak, Valius kind of gave up on the game and the guild, and we've also actually had people that surprisingly enjoyed that and just kept repeating new TLPs every year. So
Right.
different
Yeah.
crowds, I guess.
You know, I think there are some people who just kind of get off on kind of bullying people a little bit in a place where there isn't any real repercussion for it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I really actually missed that as well from the game in the sense that you could actually reach out to GMs to intervene and provide remediation assistance between members or between guilds. I mean, I remember countless times on Praxis we had interactions with other guilds, and again back then reputation was a thing, right?
Right.
And nowadays there's nobody cares.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Everyone just assumes the worst of everyone, and like your guild is big enough that who cares if people don't like you on the rest of the server.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. So so having GMs back in the day were great, and I think right now there's just not enough money for them to spend something like this, which I feel could really help. But obviously, it's all about the cost and also the profits in the end, right? EQ is a very old game.
Right. Yeah. Now, after that, you went to Agnar, right?
Yes. So yeah, so I went. Agna opened up, and a couple of my close friends actually, and I still keep in touch with them. They're based in Australia. They decided to come back to the game and wanted to try out Agna. And I was like, sure, I'll join. And they set up a guild called Imperium Deus, and it's basically primarily an oceanic guild. Obviously, we had members around Asia as well, and we also had some members who were based in US, Europe. And we started off, we did a bit of planning for that as well. We, had a website, forums, we advertised, and I think we also got a fair number of people actually interested. And, everybody started off during the launch day, waiting for the server to open, spamming, connect, connect, connect. And we had some pre-formed groups and stuff like that. So it was pretty fun. And we kind of, or I was around helping to lead as well until I believe it was Valius. And at that point, I think going through so many transitions of TLPs hit me in a way that I was also somewhat burnt out and a bit frustrated. Like we were pushing through content, and I recall this specific raid in ID during Valius where we were trying to do Avatar of War, and we just did not have enough people. Right, we had I think
Hmm.
45 to 50 in the raid maybe. We did not have enough clerics. We had a fair few tanks. We were trying to make it work. We just couldn't do the conventional method of having a proper CH rod and tanks and just DPSing it down. We just
Right.
didn't have any people for that. And
And
I
I guess like in the time zone that you guys rated, you pretty much had a really limited selection of who could even come, right? Who could join the guild at all.
yeah. I mean, apart from the Oceanic Asian players, I mean, it's hard to get more members compared to US guilds, obviously. People were also trying to help by boxing heavy, and obviously that also caused a lot of issues because you couldn't use IS Boxer and stuff like that. People were using Multiplicity to run dual PCs, for example.
Right.
Yeah, and just multi-boxing with 2 or 3 different PCs. Some of them were good at it. Some of them were not really great. Some of them were really bad.
It just makes your whole raid a little bit clunky after you have a certain saturation of boxes, though.
Correct, exactly. We were not effective, and it was very difficult to also coordinate some of that.
Yeah.
So then I recall this specific raid. We were doing Avatar of War, and I remember I can't remember his name, but the pan skill, that guy.
Cab Drew.
Yes, yes. They did Avatar of War with a very uh, small number of people as well, with this unique method where they were trying to summon tank him on the ledge, and it took like I think 1 hour, 45 minutes or something, and but it worked, right?
Right.
And I was thinking, why don't we give it a try? And we kind of did. Um, but we couldn't see it all the way to the end. It didn't work out in the end, unfortunately. But um,
That sucks.
yeah, but that raid itself, I think, kind of just uh, caused me to just step back, and I was like, maybe I just need to take a break because I was pushing myself pretty hard as well, and there were also other things happening in real life, so it did not really help. The stress and everything was kind of coming to me. And at that point, the people that were actually originally setting up the guild with me, my friends, they kind of left already. They stopped playing. So it was me carrying the guild, leading raids, and all of that was added on extra stress to me. So I took a step back. I let the other guys take over, and they were really good guys. They're great guys. But unfortunately, when I came back, I felt this was not going to work. So I kind of called it from there. Um, Although somehow, sometime a bit later, my friends, the two guys I was mentioning earlier, they came back and decided to start another guild again. And I said, okay, sure, why not? I'll help out. But unfortunately, that also didn't last because we only had like a handful of people, and a few people from Imperium kind of came over to help us out. And I think that also soured things a bit because people were saying, why are we doing that? Whereas we could actually be back in the guild helping one guild out completely. So unfortunately, that kind of caused a bit of drama as well. And we just ended up calling a day. And I think ID unfortunately did not manage to push through that far. I think they probably did Luklin, I think. Maybe also
Yeah.
did a bit of pop. And at that point, as you know, Agna kind of is just continuously on that loop, right? So
Right. Yeah. I mean, hey, it's not bad making it that far because the server ends in Plains Power. So it's like you made it most of the way.
almost to the end, correct? Yeah.
Right.
But then I at that point I was like, okay, I really need to take a bit of a breather and just skip stuff. So I didn't play on Finny. I think Finny was next, if I'm not mistaken.
Finney was between
Ah,
between Ragefire and Agnar. So like the strategy that you guys had for AOW that you got from My Pants got that from Dima actually.
right. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, no, because I saw Cat Brew actually streaming that on his stream one day, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. Um,
They did all kinds of crazy stuff like that. Like Kabdru also kited Emp Sra around the ramp at the entrance of Sra Temple for like 2 hours for a kill.
that's amazing. Would like to see that. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
wacky stuff. Like back then, you could also pull amp to zone in, right? And
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, people were kiting guards in the basements and all that. So um, yeah, so I didn't play on Finny. I didn't play on Miracle. I didn't play on Quam. But then Coirnav came along or was coming along, and I reached out to a few people that were close to me as well from Agna, mainly Asian time zone, a few Oceanic guys from Australia. I mean, and say, look, I'm for some reason, can't get away from the game, so I'm thinking of trying this one more time. And this time, it was going to be me actually forming the guild, me actually coordinating, leading everything. At that point, I had a fair bit of break already, and I was feeling a bit more refreshed, a bit better. So I formed up Eastern Coalition. I did not use the original name I used to have for many TLPs. So I go by Shiguragu, which was another name. That is actually my original name from Praxis, and a name I used on Fippy, a name I used on Agnar, but on Ragefire I used Nasir, as I was mentioning to you before. But
Yeah.
on Coinaf I decided to go with Kakashii instead. But I think a lot of people that knew me knew it was me. I
Right.
kind of I just didn't want to bring any of the baggage from Agna, which was kind of one of the reasons why I also thought, let me just use a new name here and just kind of go set stuff up fresh. So I did EC. We did a bit of advertising again. We did a fair bit of planning. And mind you, up till this point, I still have not actually transitioned to voice comms for any of my guilds, any of my raids.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah,
This is like 2017.
correct. I will say a bit more about this later, but yeah, up until this point, everything was on raid say, everything was in game. Obviously,
Wow.
some guys ran Discord servers or TeamSpeak or or Mumble or whatever, but that's just for their own thing personally. So officially for the guild, we did not need any voice comms at all. Um, so we set up EC. We were there on launch day. We set up pre-made guild groups. We formed guild, and we kind of took our time to get our footing. We did not rush to get to 50 first and then straight away hit Nagy or Vox. I think we took like maybe 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, to probably start our first Vox at the end, and then gradually just go from there, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, 2 weeks honestly isn't bad. If you look at old servers, even old TLP servers, you know what I mean? That was pretty standard. So you weren't that slow.
yeah, no, we had a lot of people actually. I mean, a lot of interest. Unfortunately, there was also some bad press about Coirnav because I think people were kind of looking for something different than Fini 2.0. But we
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
got,
And
yeah,
Coirnav had like a terrible, terrible EXP rate at the launch too, right?
correct, exactly, yeah. So that kind of didn't go well with a lot of people, but you know, a number of people wanted to play again. So we did have a fairly strong backing, especially people that used to play with me. They were interested to come and play with me again. So
Yeah.
I appreciated that. So when we started off, yeah,
One
sorry.
one thing really quick, something that a lot of people I've seen on the forums get confused about with Coirnav's EXP rate. So Finny launched with a really bad EXP rate, and eventually they decided, due to player outcry, that the EXP on Finny was too slow,
Mm,
and they bumped it up. Not it was still slow, but it wasn't as bad. Coirnav started with the bumped up Finny EXP rate. So a lot of people think that Coirnav had the slowest EXP rate because it had the pre-nerf Finny
right,
EXP rate,
but it was
but
not.
it didn't.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So Finny was a little bit worse at launch, and then got better, and Coirnav launched at the better state.
yeah. No, I actually found the XP rate fine, but I think people were also at that point just bit bummed out. Like they wanted fast EXP rates and stuff, which obviously they eventually got with Celos and Mangler, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I thought it was fine. So, because I was kind of used to it anyway as well. And and when we hit God, I think that was the first point when they had a bump slightly in the EXP rate. Um, that seemed better for us, but again, some people would argue otherwise. Um, so we had a lot of guilds as well when we started off Classic. We had a Relentless Insomnia, which was led by Vicious or Mabu. We had one European guild that started off, Reckless Guild, that was led by Gerhard and Odul, I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Yep.
Um,
Odul's a good guy. I like
yeah,
him. Shout out to Odul.
yeah, no, Odul's nice. Yeah, we used to chat a lot as well back then. Magus also created a guild. There was also TFC, the Final Crusade. Imperceptible, Ashen Oath, Spaceballs, Unknown Legacy, and Twisted Profits. So I think this is probably some of the guys from TL or Twisted Legion or Twisted Fates. I always get mixed up. There's so many renditions of them. Um,
Twisted Legion made a guild called Try Me on the server, and I
ah,
think they mostly
yes, they were there as well. Yep, correct.
yeah, I think they mostly just did small stuff for a while, and eventually linked up with RI and started doing raids with RI.
Right, yeah, because I'm just going through some of the so a lot of this is quite a long time ago, but I still recall some of it. But I had to look at the Coinaf progress side on way back just to refresh my memory.
Right.
And I do see, yeah, Try Me was around, just not during Classic, although it was not on the website during Classic. Maybe like us, EC was not that listed as well. We didn't really start putting stuff into the progress site until much later in Velius. I'm not sure why though, but maybe I just didn't really bother doing it for some reason. But yeah, we had a lot of guilds. We had guilds EST based, PST based, Oceanic, Asian. Us, we were there, and European. So it was a pretty healthy server to start with. I mean, we had a lot of people in common lands, multiple picks. Actually, pick was a thing at that point, right? Or is it just around?
There was pick zones, yeah.
Yeah, just trying to recall when it came through. So but for Classic to start with, obviously RI was trying to establish themselves as the dominant open world guild, I guess you could say. So they actually did get the first Sky clear, I think. So they cleared Classic as a first guild, and followed by Reckless. So Odul's skill second.
Okay.
Yeah, and then everybody else. So everybody else was kind of just chilling out and taking their time, but guilds were actually getting established. Trying to clear Fear, clear Ini, and work their way on Sky. Sky was obviously the main block. If you don't have enough people, obviously getting through bees is a bit of a difficulty and a challenge.
Yeah. Now, would you say it was like a pretty competitive server for the raid scene, or was it mostly relaxed?
It's probably not like I would say how Fippy was in my experience, but there were a few open world clashes here and there. Although I would say primarily the clashes eventually after Kunak and or during Kunak and Velius would be just between TFC and RI. Um,
Mm.
but at least in Classic though, it didn't seem that way at all. Like people were just letting RI do their thing from memory. Like they were always on open world as well, and for the rest of the guilds, everybody was kind of content with just using AOCs, right?
Right.
Um, so and there was really, I mean, Classic is there's not a whole lot of stuff you really want to try and chase for in open world, in my view anyway. But obviously people like doing that for the glory of it, for the rush of it, if you could call it that, the adrenaline, I suppose. And as long as they see another guild doing content open world, I'm sure RI would enjoy going there and messing with them, right? So
Did they? Do you think that was just about like getting loot, being the top guild, or was it like taking
no, I think
joy?
it's just taking joy in competing with open-ended apostrophes,
Yeah.
you could say.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not so much. I mean, if you want to be the first guild to get loot and everything, you can always split your guild. You can do multiple AOCs. It's not hard. You can coordinate that, right? But this is just about enjoying the rush of giving another guild in open world a run for their money, or at least in more cases, and not just kind of griefing, right? So.
Okay. Did you experience any of that griefing?
So in Classic, we were very low key. We didn't really interact much open world. When Kunak came along, we were getting a bit more established. We had more members. We had more geared people. We had more core classes that we needed to actually run proper raids, and we we didn't obviously do like bleeding edge, like first person to kill track kind of thing and stuff like that. Like we took our time. We eventually got it. Obviously, we killed PD as well and all of that. um, but in terms of open world, I kind of chose our battles carefully because I knew that running across RI, specifically RI in this case, because at all of the other guilds we kind of had really good interactions with, except for one more, but I'll talk about that later. So I pick and chose our open world battles, and if I do see that um, there is potential for griefing because we don't really come off. We don't want to see ourselves coming off as guild that really wants to also push our members to this, because that will kind of put a lot of our members off. They don't really enjoy that too. But we also don't want to be seen as kind of a pushover, right? So there was one point
Right.
when we saw VS was up in KC. No one was there. It didn't seem like anybody was tracking him, because normally RI or any other guild would have trackers in the zone, right? So we said, okay, we were done with the raids that we had for the day or something. I think we had a bit of time. Let's all head to KC, get this done. And we engaged. We didn't pull him to zone in like I know some guilds do. I mean, it's open world KC. We didn't really want to train the zone or anything like that. So we went up there. We started engaging him in his area, and then all of a sudden, a lot of RIs started flooding in. And we were like, great, I mean, if you want to come and jump in and DPS races, sure, But at that point, we've already started, right? We were already
Right. So you're
we
ahead.
were already ahead, yeah. So I can imagine if they do that, obviously they'll just be helping us. It's not gonna win for
Right.
them.
Yeah, you won the mobilization race. You're ahead on the DPS race.
Correct.
Should be a clean win.
Correct. And then we were going. I think VS was close to about 40% already or so, or roughly around there. And then we started getting issues. We started seeing VS getting taunted by Vicious and I think it's Slopperbotomus and maybe a couple other guys, I can't recall. And they were trying to trying to pull VS or face him away and face him the raid so you can get some riposte HP gain, and trying to just grief us with the engage, right? And it was successful because VS was not going down. He kept getting pulled away. He kept getting, his life taps working on people. So he was fluctuating between 20 to 30, 10 to 30. It just was not working well. And we tried that. We tried to sustain. So they didn't really train us. Like there were no mobs in the zone to train us. They were just doing the taunting, right?
Right.
And originally, I kind of thought it looked to me like he was far taunting, but maybe I'm not 100% accurate with that. He was there, but he got rest so quickly that he came back like within the next 10 or 15 seconds and started doing the same thing again. It was not just him. It was a couple of guys as well doing the same thing. So we were close. We were about to get it, but unfortunately, our clerics were running dry. Our chanters were also running dry, and we were like, "This is just not going anywhere." We lost a few people as well. So at the end, unfortunately, we had to call it. We didn't say anything in OOC. I mean, we I didn't want to trigger anything. I mean, I just knew that was how the modus operandi was as such for RI, right? I kind of knew what to expect, and that was it. So we just left. There was a video of it on YouTube. I think it's been floating around on forums. There was also a forum post about it actually as well, which probably doesn't exist or is locked or something, I think now. And then we just moved on, right?
When that happened, did they talk trash? Do you guys get tells or OOC or
Yeah,
shout
yeah.
drama?
There was a fair few tells. There was Vicious saying we've left the Gnal staff there. If any of you visit wants that, and then we were like, no, it's we don't need it too. But we're not there for just like we're not hungry for loot that you have to feed us something based on your actions and feel bad and then say, hey, take this loot because we were dicks. Um, so a lot of that and the some of the comments on OOC, because some people I'm sure felt like a bit frustrated, but overall on our side we just kind of kept it to the point that we just said just forget interacting with them. It's not going to get anywhere. We did try to petition though, so because we had a video of it, we did petition because obviously this kind of behavior is not really something we want to see on the server, and also from the health of guilds in itself, because this will really put a lot of people off, right? So we
Right.
don't know whether anyone actually got suspended. I did think some people did, although I'm not 100% sure. Definitely no one was banned though. So maybe some people might have gotten suspended for a week, maybe not. But then we just moved on from that point.
It's probably, I mean, it's probably the best thing you could do is just
Exactly.
like forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know,
I don't even know if the GM would recognize exactly what's happening in a video. You know what I mean? Because like the GMs we have now are like they don't play EverQuest.
correct. Yeah, that's also one of the problems. Unfortunately, they're not skilled, I think, to handle such situations. So,
Right? Yeah. They're just like, okay, the mob died. What happened? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um,
So was that your only big open world interaction with them?
yeah, I no, actually, no, that was not. So we also did. So that was Kunak, and from that point, we just carry on our own farming, and we were looking forward to Velius. So when Velius came along, that was actually quite interesting because there were a lot more stronger guilds, and Velius kind of just was a lot of interest, right? We've got sleepers, we've got TOV, we've got you know. Kale, all of that. So a lot of stronger guilds on the server at that point. Like we've still got Reckless, we've still got TFC, also a number of the other US guilds like Exiles of Agna, Unknown Legacy, Ash and Oath. They were also called pretty strong. Um, and everybody had potential to do a lot of open world combat in Velius, and we were looking at actually at that point I was thinking what would be interesting for our guild would be maybe to try and do a bit of Sleeper's Tomb 1.0 because a lot of our guys have not seen it. We've not actually experienced the whole thing because everybody rushes to open up sleepers and wait the sleeper, and you just don't get the experience to kill any of the warders. So what I did was I approached Dupree from Magnus, Magus, sorry, MIM. And I say, look, would you guys be interested in wanting to co-op and probably try to rush to get a couple of keys within the first opening night itself, and then we try to plan a joint raid for Sleepers 1.0 with half from their side, half from our side. Um, and that was the aim for us. Obviously, we had plans for other stuff as well eventually, but the first focus for us was Sleepers because we were not too sure how long it would last anyway.
Right. You got to be fast.
Correct. Yeah, and we needed to at least get some semblance of. And the plan was to actually go in there, kill with them, get a couple of droppables you can, and then later just bid it with the guild, even for those people who are not there. Obviously, some stuff was no drop, but whatever we could try and get, we would try and get. So, and we did pretty well actually. We cleared it in AOC, obviously. And we got one monk robe that went to MIM to start with. But it was definitely fun. It was a good experience. We did get some droppables as well for the guild.
Yeah.
And then I was expecting sleepers to wake, but somehow it did not. And we could keep going with our plan to also key a lot of our members, and eventually we did. We actually farmed SD 1.0 ourselves. I think we did like 3 clears maybe in total, or 2, I can't recall. Ourselves, I mean. And that lasted for about a month or a month and a bit. Someone was telling me it was 60 days, but I'm not sure if it's actually 60 days. But it lasted a fair bit. It was probably one of the longer lasting TLPs for Sleeper Not to Be Awoken, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a lot longer than Agnar.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So that was exciting. That was nice. But eventually it did get woken by the Fallen Council, actually, which is a European guild,
Mafaka's
Mafaka's
guild.
guild. Yeah, correct. But and this was the interesting thing that I noticed in Velius. Like so Reckless is the key European guild at that point, up until that point. Sorry. And then Mafaka's guild came in, and I don't know whether they were a branch off or a spin off from Reckless or not, but they were always at each other's necks. Like there was a lot of fights between them, training and stuff like that, and open world DPS races and stuff. So they did not really get along.
Yeah. Mafaka's guild comes with a lot more attitude. They have a swagger to them
Yeah.
that a lot of the other European guilds don't have.
Yeah, exactly. We EC and TFC, yeah. So we Fallen Council, we also kind of had a few DPS races in Velius. So Mafaka's guild used to always, I recall him always hanging out a lot in Open World Kale, and like whenever statue pops, boom, he's gonna be there. So there was a couple of statue races as well that we also rushed, and we also kind of DPS raced him, and we won a few. They won a few, but he had a very close relationship with Vicious and RI. So they used to actually combine forces at times to if other guilds were trying to compete against them, and if they probably saw that they were outnumbered, it would be RI plus TFC, as in Fallen Council. Sorry. And that created some interesting situations. Like I recall, there was one instance where we merged with Reckless to take on RI for our Dog War, I think, and we had to rush there, coordinate, join raids, everything, and it was a full-on DPS burn. Thankfully, no training or anything like that, and we won in the end, surprisingly. So that was also quite fun. So there were some interesting, fun experiences, but to be honest with you, if I'm more old school. Like I like the whole diplomatic approach to disputes and stuff. This whole DPS race thing. I mean, I get it. It's what people got to do nowadays. That's just how things is. And I'm fine with accepting that. What I don't like though is the added extra griefing that people do, especially like that far taunting or taunting and training, while you're engaging. If
Right.
you just want a
Yeah.
DPS
It's
race,
too crazy.
yeah, just DPS race. Keep it clean. That's it.
It's rare to have a guild that is willing to just keep it to the DPS race.
Yeah, there's always something or the other that it may not be the leadership. It could be just a member that just doesn't like it and or wants to cause chaos, right? So that
It's funny that you mentioned that they would team up, because I think on Eridoon they were in the same guild, Rampage World Tour, and then again on
correct.
Thornblade they had Cowboys and Camels, which
Yes.
was like a big
Yes. Yeah. I heard all of that as well. I wasn't part of any of those guilds or anything, but like I mentioned to you before, I enjoy reading some stuff like that. But then I think they had a falling out or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Cowboys and Camels went south, and it became two different guilds.
Yep. Yeah, I think Mafaka is still around in as in Mossad, I think, is it? I'm not sure.
He was on Mischief until Dragons of Norath or so, and then the Fallen Council went away.
Okay. Yeah. So similarly here, at least in Velius, I think the Fallen Council was getting strong at that point, or at least stronger. So Velius was the point when he broke out, or at least his guild broke out, and Reckless was still giving. Reckless was kind of still the main European guild, but the Fallen Council was also setting a name for themselves. So in terms of who won Velius, though, I think it was the Final Crusade, so TFC, that got Vulak first, and I believe that was in their AOC. And I think RI was not too happy with that because they were doing open world TOV, obviously other stuff as well, like Kale and stuff like that. But they were late to getting Vulak down, obviously. And there was a lot of contention against, but we did open world and we did all of that, and if you look at the progression side, I think it lists Vulak as the goal.
Right, the final boss. He's like the Atenhara of the expansion.
Correct, exactly, yeah. And so people were giving some grief about that, but at the end of the day,
I remember seeing that all over the forums and Discord and stuff. I think RI was kind of a cocky guild, and people, I think everyone knew that RI was a stronger guild, of course. but people wanted that opportunity to kind of poke them a little bit. So
Yes, exactly. So I was quite happy as well that TFC was growing. They were their presence was actually known, and they're doing quite well. And it was setting the stage between TFC and RI being a thing, versus each other. And then Get Some Skill, IV, um, they also were doing pretty well. They got third, I think, and Reckless was still up there as well. So um, ourselves in EC, we were just observing, watching everything. But I felt we did really well this Valius because we got everything we needed down. Like a couple of roadblocks we had was Viam, which we took a couple of tries,
right,
but we did
yeah.
it. Avatar of War, which was great as well to finally do it the conventional method and actually have enough clerics and tanks for it.
Were
Um,
you nervous going into Velius after your experience on Agnar? Were you like, this is make or break?
yeah, I was. There was one part of me that was thinking, yeah, it could be a repeat of this again. But this time around, I had a lot more support. I had a lot more people that were close to me, and I felt like the crew that we had. I loved the crew in Agna, but we had more people as well. We had a lot more people in EC, and based on the fights that we did up until that point, I knew that we were in a better position and state than I was with before with Agna because we just did not have enough numbers as well. So going into this in Valius, it was always in my mind that it potentially could end up being a bit like Agna, but at the end it did not, and we did really well. We kept farming, we were doing Tunar. We had obviously focused a lot more on Kale and TOV. And yeah, Villiers was fun. So and then obviously after that, at that point, Luklin was going to be the next open world debacle.
You're right.
But again, we kind of kept our grounds to. I guess there were a lot of interactions when it came to shard farming clashes from that point. So it's not just
It makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was not just RI though. It was also other guilds. So I do recall that. Like we had to bring in we had to bring in DPS to kind of win some of the shard farming camps, which was again I don't like doing that, but unfortunately it had to end up being the case. And I think a lot of other guilds also kind of knew that there was no bad blood or anything like that. In the end, I knew all of the guild leaders. We used to talk as well. So um, but yeah, that was a situation then. RI won Luklin though. I think they cleared Atanhara first. Um,
Yep.
but TFC was the Final Crusade was very close behind, and at this point, the Fallen Council became fairly strong, so they cleared first after Reckless. This was sort of more towards a transition where Reckless was slowly losing a bit of force as well, and Fallen Council was getting stronger or the more dominant European guild from this point. Um,
But there's a lot of oceanic guilds on Coirnav. I didn't realize so many of them. You know what I mean? Like most servers, I feel like you have one, maybe two.
mm, Yeah, I mean, so for us, we are predominantly the later GMT guild, and yeah, then you had Fallen Council and Reckless that were more predominantly the European time zone guild, but Fallen Council, I mean, Mafaka and his group and the guild were on 24/7. Like they were always keeping an eye on Vextal, SSRA. But I think the Final Crusade did pretty well. Like they went to open world SSRA, and I think RI was there as well. But they kind of pick and chose their fights. And from what I understand, there were no clashes until both of them were doing Vex style, and some of them were trying out to snipe some open world Vex style targets as well. So there's a couple of drama posts about that as well on the forum still, and that was the interaction between them. Like for us in EC, we did not do any open world Vex style at all. Even SS Raw, I think we probably did one, if I recall, maybe the creator or high priest. but we did not go after like open world emperor or anything like that. We were happy to farm in the AOCs, which we did. We cleared Vextal. We used to farm Vextal for one night. That was a bit of a challenge in the sense that it took like 4 to 5 hours because, yeah, again, we also were fairly box heavy. So DPS wise, we did not have a full set of 54 uh, raid 72 man raid army that we can just focus DPS. So it was a bit lacking to that regard. So um, anyway, we did that, and then I guess at that point, most of the other guilds there was still a lot of presence from US guilds. Like most of them were still around. Hello Darkness was also around at that point, but they eventually left the server, right? So, and then came POP, I guess, and POP is probably when things started going a bit south for the server in general. When I mean south, I mean the sense that we started losing people. We started eventually losing guilds. This is not during POP though, it's more after POP was cleared. Because at that point,
Now, was that because they announced like Cello the anniversary TLPs,
correct,
right? Cello and
that's
Mangler.
right.
So
Yeah.
people just bailed when that. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. So at that point, I think around March was when people were slowly getting towards clearing Plane of Time, or most of them would have already cleared it before like late February. Uh, but yes, and then it was coming into LDON, which nobody enjoyed, or at least some do, I'm sure. But yes, the easy option, or at least the answer there was that a lot of people that were repeating TLPs. You've got Celos, you've got Mangler, you've got the hype between Amtrak and Faceless as well for Celos, which I think a
Yep,
lot of
that
people,
was big.
yeah, it was big. Yeah, a lot of people were also looking forward to. And Mangler, which had interesting or better EXP rule sets, and that was going to draw a number of players out. So at that point, RI did clear POP first. This was just before February ended, followed by Fallen Council, then Final Crusade. But by the time LDN opened, I think we lost 4 guilds, US guilds, and
That's crazy. That is a big amount of attrition. Wow.
yeah, and pretty much when GOD opened, RI was what they were there, but they were no longer a dominant force at all. So when GOD opened, I think this was in I can't remember the month. Maybe it's June or July. Um, the Final Crusade, they came up on top. Sorry, TFC as in the Fallen Council, then Final Crusade, and we were third.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay, so moving
yeah,
up.
moving on up, But then, the other guilds. So there was still a few US guilds. So Exile of Agna was still around. MIM was still around. RI, they cleared after that. Eventually, they still had some people actually still interested in playing, but again, most of them
So they were like fifth place.
they were sixth place. Yeah, at that point.
Wow, going from first to sixth in one expansion is insane.
Yeah, it hit them pretty hard because Vicious left, I think, and he was focusing on Celos, and I'm not sure whether he stayed on there long or not. So, um, but yeah, that was the tipping point, right? And from that point, we knew already the people that were interested in staying for at least the semi long haul or these skills. Unfortunately, though, Mafaka's guild as well, just as they cleared God, they also kind of called it a day because when Omens of War came along, they were not around anymore. And we actually absorbed a couple of guys from TFC too. And I think they moved on to something else.
I think Mafaka I think he's got such a strong force of personality that the guild like literally coalesces around him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really Mafaka's guild.
Yeah.
And I think he does not like content, Omens of War and After. So when he leaves and gets bored, it's just over.
Yeah. I think that kind of makes sense. Yeah. I mean, he had a really, really strong following. and people just enjoyed him as well. So we also rubbed shoulders the wrong way during POP. I remember a couple of instances. So we played around with open world plane of fire as you would sometimes, and we clashed with them with the final with the Fallen Council, and Mafaka and a couple of his guys were kind of griefing us. We had trains, we had, you name it, we had it. This was both in open world plane of fire, in plane of earth B, when you're doing those minis as well. We had a bit of that there. But eventually, Mafaka and I, we actually got along okay. When GOD opened, we were amicable to each other, and I found him to be a nice guy to speak to. When we had issues in Kuvik, which was another battleground, um,
Oh yeah, goats all day, baby.
yeah, we managed to, not to say we worked things out. We still had DPS races, but it was not that bad. We had
Right, you can compete without animosity,
correct,
basically.
exactly, yeah, and that was the case, you see, and the Sevu as well. We had a couple of those there as well. But it wasn't as bad as it was in POP. I think we kind of saw each other a bit better during GOD, but they left after that, right? So at that point in Omens, it was just the Final Crusade, pretty much. They were the key guild, the premier guild, and the US guild as well. We also had Exiles of Agna, so they were also competing very closely with TFC. So it's EOA and TFC. And for Omens, we kind of fell down a bit. We took a bit of time to actually clear Anguish because we didn't really want to push to clear the very next day and stuff. We stuck to our schedule basically. So we did trials, no problems. We did Anguish. Unfortunately, Jelvan for some reason had a problem for us, so we took another week to clear that, and eventually got OMM a bit later. So for Omens, we were like fifth.
Okay.
And Exiles were second, then it was Hello Darkness, Mim, and ourselves. Then it's um, Imperceptible, yeah,
Imperceptible.
and Kill Mode. Yeah, so those were the guilds that were left.
So during GOD, RI officially died.
Yeah, they cleared GOD, but then after that they did not come back for Omens. Looks like, yeah.
Okay. So how long did Mim make it? I'm surprised that Mim was not placing higher if they were still around.
Yeah, but they were also slowly losing a bit of steam, I think, because
I see.
after Omens, I don't think Mim were around for DON, from what I recall as well.
So they were kind of on their last leg. It's funny enough. Dupree is my next guest. He's going to be on Sunday.
Oh, nice, nice. Okay, yeah, he's a really good guy. I mean, we've never really spoken on Discord or anything like that. So again, mind you, up until this point in the guild and in the game, no Discord, no voice call, still raid say in
That's
Omens.
just insane. Do you guys use it now? At the end of
Yes,
the
yes,
server, were you using it?
yes, yes. So
You're
I
trying to do like mirror distant text.
no, so I use raid say all the way until underfoot. Uh,
Wow.
just as we are in Convertum and as we are about to clear Sisters and Creation. Um, we At that point I needed to take a break. As you can imagine, I'm burnt out. So typing as fast as I can at that point, because everybody always makes fun of it that I like gone through like 15 keyboards or whatever. I need to take a break.
I was thinking like, how did you do Meldrath? How did you do Meldrath with no voice comms?
Just braid say. I mean, I typed out everything really quick. I did not make any hotkeys or anything like that. I was quick to type stuff out. Like, when I used to I used to type a lot of things in caps, and when people see it in caps, they knew it was urgent, or it's kind of me screaming in Discord, for example, or saying something.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it was all on raid say, and it was a challenge, but that was just the way I enjoyed leading raids, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you liked it, then that's good.
Yeah, but then to be honest with you, after switching to Discord, I think this was definitely the best way forward because I don't think I could do the way what I was doing before again at all. I think that was really
You think that was just like your comfort zone at the
at the
time?
time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then during Underfoot, we decided to bring on Discord because I needed to take a small break for a couple of expansions. And my next officer that took over leading raids, it was easier for them to do it via Discord. He couldn't, they couldn't mimic what I was doing in raids. It would just be insanity. So
Right.
we brought on Discord voice comms. We transitioned everybody on there. It was a bit of a challenge because, as you can imagine, we also have a fair few non-English speaking members from Asian countries, and that's why they were very comfortable with me in RaidSafe because they could read stuff.
Right.
Sometimes when you're listening to someone on Discord, they can't pick out the words. Could be the accent or whatever it is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So were those players like alienated a lot by that, or did they stick around
No,
still?
no, they stuck around. We just had to transition it gracefully. So we did a combination of typing out key instructions in RaidSafe still, and also then getting explanations done in Discord. And it took a while, but people kind of adjusted, got used to it. But we still type stuff out in game for some people to make sure they got it if there were any confusion, for example. So we used to also still
Okay.
do both a hybrid sort of thing. Um,
Now by underfoot, which guilds are still around?
yeah, that was actually at that point, as you can imagine. I mean, Underfoot, it was basically just the Final Crusade and EC. And Exiles of Agna, they were by TSS, actually, sorry, by Prophecy of Ro, it was just three guilds: Exiles, EC, and TFC. Um,
Right. Well, it makes sense because that level 70 stretch is brutal and it kills guilds on every single server.
yeah, and the lull in POR, I think a lot of people didn't really enjoy that too, and so
Terrible expansion.
yeah.
What was the first expansion that EC came out as number one?
So we got the first one was surprisingly DON, but that was that
Nice.
was because I think the time zone wise as well, and TFC just got it that same night, obviously. And then the one after that would be TSS. I did a fair bit of planning for TSS. Like I really wanted to push us a bit, and we did. And we got that one. POR, we did not too bad as well. We got second for POR after Exiles. But from
Were you so TFC got third place in POR?
Yeah, TFC got third for POR, and in
Wow.
DODH though, Depths of Dark Hollow, they were first though. So unfortunately, I think there was also a few things happening at that point. So the transition from DODH to POR, I think they lost one of their core leadership team members, like their main raid leader. Uh,
Okay, that makes sense then.
yeah, and then they had a bit of a dip. But then in TSS they eventually came back as well. But for the next few expansions though, like TSS we were first, TBS we were first, SOF we were first, SOD. But at that point, in Underfoot, TFC got their footing again and they took over. So they got a lot. So at that point, when SOD folded, like, no, sorry, the expansion completed, Exiles of Agna unfortunately did not make it to Underfoot. Like they got to the launch of Underfoot, but at that point, leadership like Melvin, I think his name is, decided to fold because they lost a fair few key members that were planning to come across to us, and some that went to TFC.
Hmm.
And that caused, for them to call it a day. And then at that point in Underfoot, it was just two guilds. But because they had an influx or so of EOA guys, that helped bolster the numbers, which was great. So it strengthened both guilds, and it brought TFC back up as well, to a point they could actually do a lot better. So they cleared TFC. Sorry, TFC cleared Underfoot first, then us. We were a bit slow for Underfoot. Underfoot was hard. Underfoot was probably the first expansion for us in a while that I was like, shit, this is pretty bad. Like because we relied on a lot of box healers and a lot of support from that as well. It made going through some of these events trickier, and not to mention the tanking aspects of it. Because gear wise, whatever stuff you get from SOD, it's not going to prepare you sufficiently. You need to roll glyphs, right? I mean, some fights you probably can do without it, but for us, we found the usage of glyph really a lot more prominent than any other expansion.
Yeah, I mean, it gets to where you just glyph every single raid night pretty much in EQ.
Correct. Yeah, and you can't really buy glyphs because the loyalty vendor is not there. You had to farm AA, get enough glyphs, and then use them. Um,
What was the relationship between TFC and EC like at this time when you guys were basically kind of trading expansion wins back and
yep.
forth?
No, it was good. We had a pretty good relationship. I think at that point the leader was still so the leader originally changed over time. I think so. Starbuck was the first guild leader back in the day. Then the raid leader that I was telling you about, I think his name is Majin. And he, I think, quit around that point where they lost a bit of power. And then Desek took over. He's a necro. So Desek and I mean, we don't talk a lot, but I know him, and we occasionally chit chat here and there. But they're very nice guys. We were very amicable with each other. We obviously had a healthy competition between each other as well. And like every expansion that comes, you know, obviously we tried to race a bit. We were the only two guilds left, right? So, so there was that, but that was fun, like we got along with each other, even to the point where in VOA where we had really difficult roadblocks like the unearthing Alra raid, we were helping each other, right?
Hmm.
We were there for some TFC raids. A couple of TFC guys were also joining some of our raids. But there was still that level of competition where, some people were like, hey, we're still trying to get first and stuff. But it was not as big of a thing as it was back in the early days, I guess, so.
You know what sucks about that is like you've got this server where there are these guilds that are still competitive, they're still racing,
Yeah,
they're really deep in the expansion lineup, doing challenging content, and basically nobody knows about it. Nobody respects those has the appropriate amount of respect for those guilds, and the reason they don't is because the guilds got along and no one had to go on the forums and cry. You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah.
So much of what you know about like who's a hardcore guild, who's doing what, is basically because people are being like little bitches and go on the forums or Discord and
Yep.
have to have a wine session.
Yep.
And since you guys got along, people didn't even know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our members were not really inclined that way. Like nobody felt like they had to go to forums or even Discord or anything like that and, bring up drama or issues. Like if anything, we tried to do the amicable route to try to discuss it between leaderships or themselves. Everybody's an adult that plays the game. And
I mean, that's good. It's how it should be.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. So, I was quite happy at that point because I think the last drama-related incident or issue we had was like probably Plane of Power or maybe even God. At that point onwards, though, as a guild, we were in a very good space. Like people enjoyed being around each other. We helped each other, and even guilds from or people from other guilds as well. We just got along because we wanted to see the server thrive, whoever was left, you see, and we knew that it was going to be a very long and difficult journey, especially given the fact that it was just two guilds at that point. So,
So now, what became the deciding factor that caused TFC to crumble and EC to survive?
um, yeah, so I think a number of things. Firstly, I think they gradually lost people. More and more people decided to take a break, or real life got in the way. One of their raid leaders, or a couple of their raid leaders, Neurok, for example, is one of them. He eventually decided to also take a break, I think, around Reign of Fear or somewhere, and that was a bit of a hit for them too because he was one of their key raid leaders, I think. Then Brad had to step up and take over, and over time, attrition just set in. People either
Yeah.
got tired with the game or they were frustrated that they did not have enough members, or a new server came along. Some people were a bit more inclined, like Mischief and Thornblade was also around at some point, and people thought they wanted to give this free trade FE thing a try, and so various reasons, right? And for EC though, we had the same thing. As you can imagine, being an Oceanic Asian guild in a server where there's already, as it is, not enough people, only two guilds, and you can't server transfer. And there's no, I think at that point, we did eventually get it, but at that point, no heroic characters. Trying to draw
Right.
in new players to keep us alive, that was a challenge. Um, but somehow we managed to do it, you see, and we got to the point that um, our core players, we had to look after each other, we had to look after them, we had to make sure people were happy, and most of them were, and we had a very good setup in the sense that we have a core set of players from Korea, like we've got Korean officers and leaders actually managing that, and they're really phenomenal. They're really good raiders and players. Then we have a core from Asia. Then we also have a fair few from Australia that still play with us, and a number of people from US and Europe woke up and raided. So we kind of felt more of a family, and we all knew the goal. Like they wanted to see this through. They wanted to actually get to the end point. They wanted to at least clear the server and say they've done a TLP, right? That was also the goal for TFC. And but this unfortunately, when Ring of Scale came along, I think it was just too hard because they just lost too many people at that point. And Brad couldn't keep going, and the raids they were doing were just no longer progression raids anymore. Unfortunately, like TBM was the Broken Mirror was the last expansion they cleared, and then from there, Empires of Kunak and Ring of Scale were just raiding just to make sure we have something to do, kind of thing. Um, so then at that point, after Ring of Scale, it was just EC and whoever else from TFC that wanted to keep going. We
How many of the TFC guys came over to you when they folded?
I think we had like probably eight actual players, maybe 8 or 9.
That's gotta be big that late in the game, though,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, it was. But although some of them could not really also play mornings for us, like
Hmm.
out of those people, I think only maybe 4 or 5 were actually active most raids,
I
which
see.
was still a big help. Definitely, don't get me wrong. Um, but unfortunately we couldn't create an atmosphere to help everybody else. Like we did the best we could. We also were at their raids during TBM to help, and also EOK. So we wanted to do as much as we could to try and make sure TFC did not fold, because that would also eventually be an issue for us and the server. I saw that as a point that we needed to do something here. I also did as much as early as EOA, Exiles of Agna, during SOD as well, that we wanted to go and help out, which we did. We did as much as we could to try and sustain these 3 guilds. But obviously, there's only so much we could do. We did not get any help from DBG. There was no relaxing of TrueBox. There was no removal of keystroke detection. All of that, added to the frustration.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think they're so out of touch. They really like they're very unwilling to change what they think is a core rule set feature after the server launches, and they identified TrueBox as like that kind of thing.
Mm.
So servers before Yellonak probably are not going to get relaxed TrueBox, even though there's really no reason at all to have it after Omens of War.
Yep, exactly. It doesn't serve any purpose at all whatsoever. So
And then, like, I feel like less players know about this, but you're talking about the keystroke detection. Like, it basically prevents you from using multi-binds, right?
Correct. Yeah. So
Which is a huge part of competent rating
yes,
after the expansions, like that are easy mode.
exactly. Yeah. Everybody now and even on live as we are experiencing it, it's all about key binds. You're hitting like 8 or 9 different keys at the same time because that's just the way DPS or healing and aggro and stuff works now. So
Yeah, we need to get together and make sure that the devs understand that problem that exists. I don't think it was what they were thinking when they made the keystroke detection. They were thinking keystroke detection to stop 10 mages from pressing pet attack at the
exactly.
same time, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, they're not looking at the 5 years down the road how that impacts.
Yep.
So can you give me a number or a list of the number of the expansions that you guys placed first in?
Yeah, I roughly can, I guess. So, I mean, we did DON. That was our first clear. But again, at that point, there was only 4 guilds left. But still, I mean, it was interesting and it was quite an achievement for us as well as guild. Then
A win's a win's a win.
yeah, then we did TSS. We were first there. Then TBS, SOF, and SOD. We did not get Underfoot. We did not get House of Tool. And then from VOA onwards, it was us, basically.
Okay, so you guys had like 10, you had like 15 expansion wins pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, we got all of the unique server first titles except for Underfoot. There was none for House of Tool, I think. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, how many expansions did TFC get?
TFC got a lot. I think they got Valius, they got Gates of Discord, Omens of War, Depths, and I think and
Underfoot and
Underfoot
House
and
of
House of
Tool.
Tool. Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so they got 6. You guys got like 15. RI got 4.
Yeah, RI would be Classic, Kunak, POP,
Lucklin and Pop.
Looklin. Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So a distant third on there. That, I mean, it's a crazy story. And now coming into like the home stretch here, what happened with, you guys were still progressing, and then they pulled the rug out from under you pretty much, right?
Yeah, so we heard from I guess an update from DBG that they were planning on actually merging Coirnav a lot sooner than the schedule progress that Coirnav should be taking as per TLP in July, and that would mean that we would either just end the expansion end the server as Clause of Vishan, COV, or we discuss with them to try and get a faster schedule in place to try and get as many remaining expansions experience within a TLP setting as we could before the July merger date. Now we kind of had this discussion internally within the officers and also the guild members, and technically when we do that, it basically means the whole server because we are the only people left.
Right.
um, so we had a vote. We had a lot of interesting feedback back and forth. People were kind of leaning between both as an option. Like some of them was just saying, just leave it as it is, and because one side of the story is that obviously with a sped up timeline, that is going to cause a lot more stress on people to ensure that they meet rates, that to ensure that they are also able to experience that content before it moves on to the next expansion. And a lot of people at this point were also kind of feeling the burnout. We've been raiding for like 5 years, close to it.
But you could see the light at the end of the tunnel at this point,
Yeah,
right?
no, for sure.
And you're like, you don't want it to go to live and you never got a chance to take a swing at it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was one point of view, and a lot of people. So people were torn between half and half. But in the end, the part that won in the polls that we had were that they wanted to see a sped up timeline at least if we had nothing, no choice, then let's do that so that we could also experience the last few expansions. So at that point, I think we were close towards wrapping up TBL, and then we decided, or we went to, or I went to DBG and say, look, okay, let's get this schedule here for TOV, COV, and TOL, the last three ones that we want to see try to fit into those months left before July. I kind of fashioned the remaining months in a way that we would have sufficient time for TOV, but maybe not sufficient time for COV. And that was actually true because I kind of underestimated the impact COV would have in the amount of time that we had to farm gear. Um, like the expansions at that point were very heavy in terms of requirement for the gear you need to have. Like we were rolling into TOV with still having ROS gear or even EOK for some boxes. And at the end of TBL, so we didn't get to clear Meritas, by the way. We did everything except for that.
Mm.
But at the end of TBL, we were still having a lot of EOK gear, and we could not get ourselves properly upgraded in TOV because um, we only raided 3 nights a week. And within those 3 nights as well, we were also lacking some, like people, we were not very active to the point. Like a lot of people were still very busy with real life. So occasionally, if we had enough people, we would hit the harder progression rates. And if it's not, then we had to just focus on farming. It was hard for us to progress as fast as I wanted us to do. So we took a bit of time, but eventually we did clear TOV before COV opened. But when COV opened, we knew it was going to be hard. Like, we did not have enough people geared. We had to slowly take our time. And we only actually cleared COV. Like we cleared everything. We cleared Bulak and Ari as well. But only once, TOL opened. And just a week before we actually decided to migrate to Vertox. This was 1 week before the merge happened. So we decided to move as a guild on the week of the 10th of July. And the merge window was like 18 or 19 or something. So,
Okay, so you went to Bertox.
yes, so we're in Vertox right now, correct.
Wow, look at it. We're back together again. The same server that Faceless went
I
to.
know, I know, exactly, yeah. But we're having a good time. I mean, everybody is very happy. I mean, we are happy that we accomplished what we did. We're happy that we.
What you guys did was amazing, super amazing.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, it was a lot of hard work, man. I mean, we couldn't have done it without the members actually sticking through, without the actual people behind the raid forces. Like we had some really strong, committed people. Our Korean team was solid. The guys around Asia and US and the remaining members we had. I mean, we still had and still have actually people from day one with us, and that is that's really cool to see. So.
So to you, on this huge journey that you went on, what felt like the halfway point on Coirnav to you?
Mm, that would probably be, I think, underfoot. I would say. Like I knew when we got to underfoot, like we were kind of there, but we're not really there. It did feel a bit halfway to me, and it was also quite apparent because it was a big test to us as a guild. Like every other expansion before that, it was interesting and the raids were challenging, but not as of a gatekeeper as Underfoot was, and that really pushed us. But I felt when we got to Underfoot, it kind of and we got clear of it. I was like, okay, um, we are we've done really far. We've gone past a really major hurdle, but there's still these expansions in front of us, and that kind of felt like you know we probably just need to keep going, and it's the same amount of expansions left before we would get to the end. But it still felt like a lot of work, so it wasn't going to be as easy as okay, the last few expansions before that, I knew it was going to still require a fair bit of work to get that, because these are all late expansions that a lot of many people have not actually experienced and gone through. Like in terms of strategies, I mean, everything is out there, everything is got a video, or you've got forums. I mean, freelance is great, um, but you know, a number of our members have not run through content like this at all before, even on live, right? Occasionally, you would have a couple of people that have actually done some of these expansions here and there, but predominantly a lot of this is fresh. But that was the exciting part of it. So at that point in Underfoot, even though it kind of felt like we still had a long way ahead, people were also quite excited because it was new content. It's fresh.
Yeah. Now, now that you have gone to Burtox, did you guys see a resurgence in the guild? Like, did you get a lot of new apps and stuff like that? Are you guys healthy now?
Yeah, no, we did. I mean, before moving to Bertox, I actually reached out to Jarinu, who's the leader of Rekus. And I actually gave him a heads up and said that this was probably about a year before we were going to be moving anyway. And I kind of told him that my plan was to look at moving to Bertox potentially as an option. So I was also considering walks because I'm also quite close to Dima. But then I thought that if we merged with walks, which could also work, but we would have probably a harder time getting new members because on Bertox we had Rekus, who is an oceanic Asian guild as well, time zone. Unfortunately, though, they don't raid anymore. They've kind of gone through a bit of a difficult period last couple of years, and they've kind of stagnated. They don't raid anymore. So there was a lot of existing members there that still played or moved on to Faceless. Like I know a lot of them actually still they raid with FC. Um, but they were from Rekkers, and there were also ex-Rekkers members around that were interested in joining us. Um, so I made that plan. I reached out to them. I spoke to a few of them on Discord. I made a couple of posts on their forums, and we worked out um, a list of people that will be joining us when we came across. So far, coming to Bird Talks, we've had a fair few, actually, around 10 to 15 people, which is great. And we are slowly trying to settle and establish ourselves. But we've been doing pretty well, actually. We've already cleared 5 Norse raids so far. And Norse is a lot easier than Tall, by the way. But that has helped us settle in and stabilize the guild. And now we're just trying to also see whether we can eventually get more people to trim the boxes. Like we've trimmed considerably amount of boxes now with the new recruits we have. And at some point, I hope we can get to a point where we can just field a full rate of mains, which will be great.
Yeah, that'll be awesome, man. Well, I'm glad that things are looking bright for the guild after everything that you guys had
Yeah,
to go through.
thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, it was
Now,
quite a journey, but we are happy that we are finally there. So,
so there are a lot of guild leaders out there, a lot of guilds that are trying to do what you guys did. Do you have any advice to them?
um, stick through it. I mean, it's hard. It is a lot of you will come across a lot of things against you and a lot of trying times, you could say. But as much as you can, try to push through and stick with it, because at the end of the day, once you get to the end goal, nothing. The feeling of actually completing a TLP is very much surreal. I mean, and not just for yourself, but also for the members within the guild. I mean, everybody feels the sense of accomplishment. I mean, you can never fully win EverQuest, obviously, but some part of you would still feel that you have, because you completing a TLP gives you that feeling for me. So um, try not to let um, things get to you. I think that's the part that also is difficult for a lot of leaders. Like they get affected by side drama or issues, but and this was also one mistake I made. Try to have as much support as you can, in the sense that if you've got a good set of officers to support you, that is extremely important and pivotal, because you cannot be the only one actually driving the show. you need strong backing from a core set of officers, and each one actually helping you out with many different things. I did have that, but I was also someone that saw driving a number of things myself, which was one of the mistakes I made, which kind of caused me to burn out. Um, but look, I mean, over time I've learned a lot of these things. It has actually taught me a lot leading this guild on Coirnav, not just within the game but also personally. I mean, it was also a journey of my own personal improvement, you could say. And whether I'll do it again, I don't think so. I mean, I think if I do actually embark on something like this again, I would definitely want to only do it if there is a lot of people actually doing the work together versus just one person actually coordinating and driving and leading and raiding leading the raid. Um, so long story short, yeah, it is definitely worth it. It is definitely a challenge, though. It will take a toll on you. But if you can push through a lot of these barriers, the reward at the end is really surreal.
Join a list of people that is very, very short. You know what I mean? That has accomplished that. It's amazing.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, Kakashii, it has been really awesome having you on the show today. Thank you so much for making the time to meet with me. I know scheduling was tough and everything, and I got to say, I have so much respect for you and for what your guild did and what you led them through to get to where you are today. So props to you.
No, thanks, man. No, I appreciate you reaching out and giving me a voice as well here on your podcast. I'm sure we will have many interactions in the future. Who knows? I mean, the 25th is coming up next year.
Oh yeah, don't drag me into that, man.
There's a lot of talks about that as well, and I'm also I don't know. I mean, who knows what will happen? So I think that'll be an interesting year if they get the rules for the server right. But yeah, we'll see.
Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before we wrap up?
Yeah, sure. I want to thank a lot of guys. I did also make a forum post about this. In terms of our journey, I wanted to. I thank Dima, Frank, Seeger, Aldrin, Scoos, Kizant, Yukon as well, and Tick from Ragefire. There's a whole bunch of people that were also helping us out throughout our journey. Even though they stopped at various points, they were still keeping in touch with us on Discord, WhatsApp, supporting us from the bench lines, and I really do appreciate that. But yeah, I think the list goes on and on. A lot of people helped us out, and we are really grateful for that.
That's awesome. That's good. All right, man. Well, that's a wrap, folks. Thanks for coming in for the whole podcast. Coirnav had an amazing story, one of the better ones I've heard so far, in my opinion. And I'm glad we got a chance to tell it because I think a lot of people did not know all this stuff. If you haven't already, please follow the podcast, hit that star thing, and click all 5 stars on there. Come check us out on Twitch. We stream every Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And check out the links in the description. But with all that said, this is Zaide, out.